Tell us about yourself and the work experience that qualifies you to become Sacramento County Sheriff.
58, lifelong Sacramento resident. I was actually born in France. My dad got transferred to Mather, so we came here when Mather was still open. So I grew up here. I've got 4 daughters. I spent 30 years with the Sacramento County Sheriff's Department. I retired at the rank of captain. I spent 10 years in narcotics. So for 5 of those 10 years, worked undercover and bought drugs every night undercover, and worked in the gang unit as a detective, sergeant, and a captain, and ran the actual division. 15 years as Elk Grove's first mayor. So in 2000 to 2015, so mayor and council member. So we got to build a city from the ground up, which is amazing. Form our own police department. I got a lot of experience there. And for the past 8 years, I've been in the state legislature. I represent South Sacramento, Elk Grove, Galton, Lodi. So about 500,000 people, a lot of work, a lot going on. So I want to bring my experience and use my experience.
What would be your top 2 priorities as Sacramento County Sheriff?
Number 1 issue in Sacramento County and statewide is homelessness. So far, we've probably spent in excess of $20 billion on homelessness. It's gotten worse. The public expects something to be done. They're frustrated and they want government to do something to fix it. And then really number 2 is crime out there. A lot of folks are scared and worried about things. And on the homeless issue, it's not a crime to be homeless, number 1, but a lot of folks are homeless. And you look at our American River Parkway, over 100 fires in the past 2 years, large amount of resources dedicated to deal with that. We had a murder of the Rancho Cordova woman on the parkway, and it's just gone on and on. Folks that normally ride out there and enjoy the parkway and walk on the parkway are afraid to do that. Most of that's in the county's jurisdiction. You've got to deal with that. I realize the Boise decision where you can't move someone unless you have somewhere for them to go, but at the same time you can enforce the laws. And when I say that, enforce the laws, think about it. There's a lot of drug dealing going on, a lot of violence we see there, a lot of rapes, and the homeless on homeless murders. You probably had about 9 in Sacramento County in the past 2 years. So right now, the Sheriff's Department is not enforcing those laws there. They're kind of hands off with the homeless camps, and you can't do that. You have to go in and deal with that and try to make these people's lives better. And also be a good partner working with county agencies and other local jurisdictions. Crime, it's hand in hand, the shooting downtown, the jails releasing folks. You've got to be cautious in how you do that and go about that. It never should have happened. Those individuals are prohibited from owning guns. I want to use my background, 10 years of working in the gang unit and working in narcotics. I know who the players are and what the issues are, and really get involved in depth in that and make a change, because some folks will change, but a lot of these individuals we're dealing with, that's their mindset, is that gang lifestyle, and they're not going to get away from it. So we've got to address that issue and make sure the public feels safe and comfortable.
Mm-hmm. And just one follow-up to that, just based on something that Under Sheriff Barnes mentioned earlier this week. He said that you have been a state lawmaker for 8 years now and have had the chance as such to affect change with homelessness. And so his position is, well, what can you do as sheriff that you have, in his words, failed to do as a state lawmaker? Do you want to answer to that?
Well, number 1, state lawmakers don't deal with homelessness. The state provides the funding, so we push the money down to the counties. So my job is to make sure we get the laws passed in the Capitol. But as far as funding goes, you think about it, your police departments, your sheriff's departments, your homeless outreach and services, the housing for homeless, the state funds that, but the county administers it. So he's gravely mistaken in that fact.
Why do you think you are the best choice for Sacramento County Sheriff in general and compared to your opponent?
I guess the big thing that I'm running that I really point to is experience. And my opponent, his is just the sheriff's department only. And like I said, you take my time in the legislature, on city council, in the sheriff's department, my community work, my community involvement, working with a number of community-based organizations. It makes me more well-rounded and able to do those things and leverage contacts and really work with folks and bring about the change, and also bring about resources that we need in law enforcement right now. You're the sheriff, you have relationships. So I have the majority of the board of supervisors that endorse me. You work with those folks. When it's disturbing when I have members that tell me the only time I've seen the sheriff in 7 years is during a budget hearing when he's before the board asking for money. It doesn't work that way. You've got to have relationships and work with these folks day in and day out and get it done. I'm supported by the majority of the mayors of the big cities in Sacramento County from my 15 years in the city council and being in the legislature. So I've got relationships with those folks, and to really work on that and help move the needle on how we do it. Law enforcement can't do it alone, but you need relationships to deal with some of these issues. And I want to use those and use my experience and leadership to really move things in a different direction. because we're at a pivotal moment. I mean, like I said, with the homeless crisis, and there's a lot of crime involved in that. And for a long time, crime was down there 7, 8, or 9. Crime is number 2 in the public's eye. That's a big, big issue. So I want to help change that.
You know, Under Sheriff Barnes has been called by you in your campaign material, you know, the Trump candidate, Sheriff Jones 2.0. Do you want to speak a little bit to that, about kind of your concerns about what voters would get in Barnes?
Well, the biggest thing is he's Scott Jones' handpicked successor. The voters pick the next sheriff. You don't get to anoint someone that picks that. And you think about some of Scott Jones's things. He said, BLM, they're a bunch of terrorists, locking the inspector general out, lawsuits, over $20 million in lawsuits, 4 women and 2 of color sued the sheriff's department, and during a jury trial in federal court, the department lost. They've had a lot of deaths in the jail with that. So there's no way that he can distance himself from Scott Jones, because Scott picked him, and he's that guy. He's like, I'm a different guy. I was never involved in those decisions. Well, you are a manager and one of the top managers over there. So you're involved in that, or either you're involved or you're complicit in it. So you don't get a pass on it that, hey, I didn't do it, I wasn't involved. Yeah, you were involved in that decision making, and if you didn't speak up, and you should have spoken up with some of these things. So it's like, who's running it? They can't point fingers at each other. And like I said, it's detrimental. And like I said, you look at just go through the newspaper and see the things that have happened. I'll give you a good example, the Rancho Cordova police chief, the meme that was disparaging of African Americans. They let the county handle that. If you Google that, memes in law enforcement, you'll see cases in LA, San Francisco, and Redding. Those law enforcement agencies handle those investigations themselves. They didn't pass the buck and resolved it. Obviously it was passed. The person who's no longer with the sheriff's department was allowed to retire, was on paid leave for 3 or 4 months, getting paid to sit at home. And still the sheriff's department could have done a concurrent investigation and then made it so that person can't get hired in law enforcement anywhere else. They failed to do that. Someone owns responsibility. Jim Barnes was her direct report. He was her supervisor or manager. He was over her. So he failed to do anything with that. So, and they wonder why people mistrust law enforcement, because of actions like that and not taking the correct action. We're dealing with human beings. They're going to do dumb things sometimes and make mistakes, and you have to be held accountable. And something like that meme, which is very offensive, they drop the ball on it. And it makes them look bad, and it makes the community distrust law enforcement even more.
How can the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office build trust with historically marginalized and over-policed communities of color?
Sure, as an African American, I get it. I understand the feelings of the community, but it's really working with those folks. And one thing the public wants, no matter what color you are, is transparency. And that's so important. They want to make sure that you're doing your job and it's transparent. The Sheriff's Department fired the Inspector General. He was a person that didn't oversee the Sheriff's Department, but was a neutral party that looked at things and, hey, can you do things better? He issued a report the administration didn't like. They fired him. That doesn't make sense. I mean, we can agree to disagree on things, but you just don't fire the Inspector General who the public trusts. That doesn't work that way. Some of the rhetoric coming out of the Sheriff's Department, it's just, it doesn't belong there. It's so much easier to get along with people, and we can agree to disagree, but we're still going to work together. And the Sheriff's Department's closed off from the community and doesn't have those relationships. Look at diversity. It's lacking in the Sheriff's Department. I was there back in '84 when I hired on. You had 20 African Americans, and now you have less than 70. So needle hasn't moved. They're down 140 positions right now. Think about that. 140 deputy sheriff positions that could be on the street dealing with the crime issues and helping our homeless. That's negligent. There's no way they're going to fill those positions before the end of the year. They can't, because right now they're competing with everybody else in law enforcement. And really, it's a candidate's market. You go to where you want to go, and they're not the only game in town.
As sheriff, what would you do to help hire more people?
There are a lot of good candidates and good diverse candidates at Sac State. They have a law enforcement candidate program. It's been going on since 2015. That's a great pool of local kids to draw from to be deputies. I've been down there. I've been down the program, been involved as an assemblyman. I've given certificates to those candidates and talked to them. They come out and help with my annual turkey drive, my backpack giveaway, and really being engaged and casting that net wide to try and bring in the most qualified pool of candidates. Because law enforcement is tough. I mean, think about it. Who wants to be a cop these days, to get yelled at and some of the things that are said to law enforcement, it's tough for the men and women doing that job. It's very stressful. So it takes a unique candidate to want to be a law enforcement officer in this day and age and cast the net wide. A lot of departments are going out recruiting the military, going out of state, doing signing bonuses. So there are a lot of things that you can do to get those quality candidates, and the Sheriff's Department's not doing that right now, which is detrimental to Sacramento County.
Sheriff is a nonpartisan elected position, but political issues do come up. What role do you think politics should play in this office?
It really shouldn't play a role. It was turned in by my opponent into a partisanship race, and it really shouldn't be. At the end of the day, you want to make sure the residents of Sacramento County are protected and feel safe, and that's really what it comes down to. And it comes down to resources. The Sheriff's Department, that's all my opponent knows is the Sheriff's Department, nothing outside that. Not building the city from the ground up and obtaining funding, not going back to Washington, D.C. and lobbying, and not funding on the state level. I've bought $1 million for after-school projects for kids to go in South Sacramento, in Meadowview, $4.5 million for a food bank in Elk Grove. Our kids that are our most at-risk kids at high schools, we take them down to Google, Facebook, and Levi Stadium to talk about jobs in STEM. So we do a lot of things that really help kids and do that. And like I said, that's fine, you work for the Sheriff's Department, but what have you done for your community? I've been on board for Big Brothers and Big Sisters, the Boys and Girls Club, Children's Receiving Home, and When Youth Services for homeless teens. My passion is our youth to try and help them. And it's been a continual fight with that. So it's just really where the rubber meets the road, and it comes down to having that experience and leveraging it to make Sacramento better for everyone else. And the Sheriff's Department hasn't done that recently.
Your opponent says you are years removed from law enforcement and developments in the field. How do you respond?
I've only been gone 8 years. I'm heavily involved. I am called the cop's cop in the Capitol. I'm always involved. I've run 30 public safety bills that were for victims, for women and children, and to deal with sexually violent predators. I work with statewide law enforcement on a regular basis. So I think I've got my finger on the pulse, the laws that are passed. We had laws passed because of what the Sacramento Sheriff's done. They wanted to change the sheriff selection to the presidential cycle year. They wanted to allow anybody to run for sheriff. And that's because of issues that people see here in Sacramento because of the Sheriff's Department here and some of the things that have gone on, and people want to change. So I 30 years, a long time, a manager. I commanded every division in the department, more than Mr. Barnes did. And it comes down to experience. And that's the most important. I know how to be a leader. I've done that 30 years in the Sheriff's Department, 15 years as a mayor and council member, 8 years in the legislature. And what I'm most proud of, if I was so out of touch, the California Police Chiefs named me Legislator of the Year. The District Attorneys Association, all 58 DAs in California named me Legislator of the Year. Crime Victims United, crime survivors. I'm the Crime Victims Legislator of the Year. So I could go on and on and on. The mayors of Sacramento's big cities endorse me. A lot of council members endorse me. 50,000 police officers statewide endorse me. 30,000 firefighters endorse me. So if I was doing such a horrible job and so out of touch, why are they endorsing me? Because I've put in the work. I'm not afraid to go against the system or anybody else to support victims' rights, and I've done that for the last 8 years. I'm proud of my record of what I've done. A lot of bills that were, detrimental to public safety, I helped modify or even change sometimes, and even kill some bad bills. So I stand by my record. I'm very proud of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And DA Schubert also endorsed you, right?
She did, yeah. The DA Schubert, yes, she did. And that says a lot when the DA doesn't endorse him. So I've worked with her on the DNA bills. Obviously, the Golden State Killer was done here in Sacramento, but to make sure we protect women and children. So I've worked with her my entire time in the legislature. I guess I would point to that, and that's what I'm most proud of. These folks endorsed me because of what I've done and what I did. They haven't endorsed Jim Barnes, and that, to me, is a red flag. Why aren't they endorsing him? If he's current, he knows everything. It's because I can get things done, and I want to use my leadership to help do that.
What would you change at the Sacramento County Jail?
Number one, be a good neighbor. Downtown partnership businesses, when folks are released out of the jail, they hang around down there, some commit new crimes, ensure they get a ride back to where they came from. Some can get, family members will pick them up, some don't have rides, but do that. That's very simple. You've got the ride share now with Uber and Lyft. There's a way, if we can do it or the county can pay for it, that's not a big deal. Just think about this. Most folks have had cameras, body cameras for a long time in their officers. Elk Grove PD, Citrus Heights PD, Folsom, Sac PD, everyone. The Sheriff's Department, they still don't have body cameras in the jail. So these agencies have had for years, and here you have your largest agency in Northern California that still doesn't have body cameras fully implemented. LAPD does, and they're 7 times big. There's 7,000 officers. LA Sheriff does. So most folks had those cameras. They were so resistant for so long, which didn't make any sense because the cameras protect the public and they protect the officer. It tells a story, a portion of a story. So why would you ever be objectionable to having cameras? And it really took so long. Yeah, medical is separate, but there's a lot of things that happen. Inmates treatment. So you think about that. This is a federal judge who said, you're not doing your job, so I'm going to oversee you and do your job. So yeah, I get the medical part, but this goes way beyond medical, what that judge is telling them to do, because they failed at that. They had a chance to settle this lawsuit, and because of their arrogance, they didn't settle it, and it cost the taxpayers tens of millions of dollars for that. And it's wrong. You have to have relationships. The board funds the sheriff's department, the board of supervisors. So when you have a majority that don't have a relationship with the sheriff, that makes it harder to build additional facilities or gain those monies or tax dollars, or even get money from the state. He has no relationship with his local state legislators. They don't talk to him. So that's the big issue. That's why when I get a majority of the board of supervisors, 3 of the 5 endorsing me, I can work with those folks. I can work with the other 2 to try and get things done and really change the narrative with that. And it's people know, and it's not okay. We've got to change the way we do business.
Talking about both the homelessness issue and letting people out of jail and having them just kind of wander around, what can be better done. Any thoughts on something like wraparound services or some who might say homeless people, like you said, homelessness is not a crime and the jail is already having issues with overcrowding and whatnot. We shouldn't be funneling people to, jail who are having mental health crises. What about services? What about care for people who maybe are dangerous on the street but aren't necessarily criminals? How do you walk that line?
That's a good question. And wraparound services, to me, are very light. They're heavy on the housing. They're light on the mental illness and substance abuse. And what's crazy, and I've fought these folks for the last 8 years, is some people are so concerned about freedoms, they would rather have someone walking around with no clothes on in 30-degree weather and be free than be the responsible adult and take that person into protective custody and get them a hot meal, a warm bed, and some place to stay. And that's the battle we fight with on that. And I want to be the adult in the room and be engaged in that. Yeah, it takes working with everybody else and being a good partner and not being an obstructionist, not fighting with your board of supervisors, fighting with your local electeds, fighting with other county agencies to get things done. This just doesn't work. You've got to be a team player. And the sheriff's department is not a team player. I'll tell you what, for the inspector general, he can be a big help in noting deficiencies where the sheriff department needs help to convey that message to the public. But if you're firing the inspector general, you don't have a relationship, that inspector general can't help you whatsoever. And that's the frustrating part. It takes a lot of effort to be mean and angry. It doesn't take a lot to be nice and civil to people. And that's the problem. I want to be that sheriff that gets along with people and, hey, we're going to agree to disagree sometimes. We can still be civil and we can still get along. And that's the big issue.
Would you welcome oversight?
To an extent, yes. I think the inspector general does it right now. They've got a sheriff's advisory board, which is good. And I think when you're transparent and you're engaging people, I think a lot of their fears will slowly go away over time. And it's just being engaged with people and being real and not trying to hide the ball.
Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely,
I really appreciate it.